Welcome to the Introvert Sisters, the podcast by introverts for introverts, hosted by Sharon and Lisa, two INFJs with a lot to say.
Hi, I'm Sharon.
And I'm Lisa.
And together,
we're the Introvert Sisters.
Welcome to our podcast.
Welcome to our podcast. So, what is going on in what's happening with you? Introverts uniting separately. Let's jump right in.
Well, the most interesting thing that has happened is that our female PM,
whom we love and adore,
has laid out a plan for the future of the country, getting people back to work post-corona, revitalizing the tourism industry, getting more people to take up the Barbados welcome stamp. In case you all didn't know, people are now allowed to apply to come and work from the island for a year after completing the necessary quarantine and paying the requisite fee. They had 1,000 applications in the first week, and they've had more since. Anyway, and Barbados is going to become a republic.
So this is official, like it's really happening.
This is official, like it's really happening. Although, it's been really happening a couple of times before, but I think she means it. It's been really happening before, to the point where they actually had plans in place for how it could happen. They had, they have a program. She said they're going to basically dust off and see if it's still relevant. Right? Because for those who don't know, Barbados is a former British colony which became independent in 1966, and officially the Queen is the head of state, which applies to many former colonies, even places like Canada and Australia. Okay? So
I don't think a lot of people know that, so thanks for saying that.
A lot of people don't know that. In fact, I think Canada is one of the few countries in the world, is one of the only other countries in the world that actually has the Queen on their currency.
Right. Wow.
Right? So the thing about this is that, Barbados in particular has always had this reputation of being Little England, very, very, very English. And there have always been mixed feelings about this whole republic, republic plan. But I do think that, as our PM put it, we're ready to go it alone. It doesn't mean that you're not going to still be in the Commonwealth. It doesn't mean you're still not going to have ties with the UK. It really is it's almost like a paper exercise that says, okay, we are fully independent now.
My question is, and I'm a big fan of Mia's, but politicians will politic. And so my question is, why now, in the middle of 2020 of all years, pandemic year, and the world is falling apart, and the orange one might get voted back, and all that stuff is going on, right? Why now? Like, why not next year? I mean, it's already waited this long. Why not wait a bit longer? Is there what is being gained by doing it right now in the middle of the pandemic?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, sis.
Since clearly you're like a political analyst, right?
your guess is as good as mine. I actually have no idea why now. Although I will say that, she's one of these, she's not an ivory tower PM. Okay, Prime Minister.
Definitely.
She walks around, she meets people, even after she became elected, So I'm wondering whether she has kind of taken the temperature and feels that the time is ripe for a change, and she's going to be the one to drive it through. I wonder.
Well, she also, again, politicians will politic. And one must tend carefully to one's legacy.
One must
indeed. One must have a couple of big, some gigantic.
I think steering your country through a pandemic with no community spread counts as part of your legacy, though.
Oh no, that wasn't to imply that wasn't.
Okay.
I mean, I 100% agree. That's again, I guess what
Yes,
I'm trying to say, the legacy must be multifaceted.
yes.
So
I
the
don't,
pandemic thing will be one, and the
yes.
republic thing will be the other, another.
I I don't know about the timing. Uh,
Yeah.
I do trust her brains.
Oh, her
So,
brains are amazing. Yes. Well,
right.
yeah. That's a good decision.
So I feel like there's probably some good reason for it that we may not yet be aware of.
Right.
Okay. And
Right.
so far she has proved trustworthy, and I will continue to trust her in this.
Okay. Fair enough.
I,
Yeah.
you know,
I was just interested.
honestly, I don't know that I mind one way or another. I remember when it last came up, which I think was 20, 30 years ago, I thought, well, why bother? You
Right.
know? And now I think, okay, fine, you know,
So what's the chatter been like on Facebook and in the Twitterverse and so on? Like,
split,
mm,
split. There's the why are we doing this in the middle of a pandemic viewpoint. There's the time for us to cut the apron strings and go it alone viewpoint. And
mm-hmm.
there's the I don't think it's actually going to change much other than on paper viewpoint. And depending on which social media feed you dip into at which time, you might see any or all of those viewpoints.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I worry about is now I'm about to expose my ignorance here. So Trinidad is a republic.
Trinidad is a republic.
Is Guyana a republic?
Guyana might well be a republic. Yes. I
I
think
guess we
Guyana is a
have to do.
republic.
I guess we have to do some Caribbean civics. But anyway, yeah. Okay. So
But
I mentioned those two because my recollection is that they took a hit fiscally, economically and so on, and so that is a little bit of a red flag for me. Currencies have been devalued. There's been all kinds of fallout, and so I wonder.
I don't know that the hit related to becoming
Okay.
a republic unless there are costs to that I am not aware of.
Okay.
I
Well, that's good to know.
believe
I'm not the one. I say straight up, I am not. I'm not. What's his name now? Peter Wickham. I'm not one of those people.
yes, yes.
I don't claim to have that level of understanding. It was just an association in my mind that I wanted to, get
Yeah.
clarified.
Yeah. I think they were affected by other things.
Okay.
Because it's not like, we're not colonies. So
Right.
we're not getting funded overtly
Mm-hmm.
by the UK.
Right.
Okay. The only thing that would occur to me, and I don't know, because the Governor General acts as the Queen's representative, maybe her office is funded by the UK.
Right. Well, it looks like her wardrobe is funded by the UK.
I think
Have
she's
you
taken a
seen
leaf
the fashions?
out of Arliss's book, There's
Yes,
definitely a sort of queenliness going on there.
definitely. I'm a fan.
Definitely. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, other than that, I don't know what it would change.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
I will watch with interest. Apparently, we're going to become a republic by 2021. So let's see what happens.
All right. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
So that's a big change, another big 2020 change.
That is a big 2020 change. Have you got anything?
How you like my segue that I'm queuing up here?
Yeah. Segue away.
Segue. And other big changes that are occurring in 2020 include that language has changed.
Oh yeah.
Language has changed,
Yeah.
and since words are our thing, both of us, but I think you skew a little more heavily in that direction than I do, Miss Scrabble champion. I will never play you in Scrabble, by the way, ever. But
No.
Well, first of all, I don't think it's my thing. I think I turned myself off it because I realized, when we were very young, that I would be crushed to smithereens, and I was like, this is probably not going to be good for my self-esteem. I'm just going to bow out now.
Oh,
but literally, I was a child.
Yeah.
But side note. So yeah, you are so into words, and so I'll turn this over to you.
Yes. As dictionary.com put it, 2020 has changed language. So there are all kinds of new words, dead naming, dead naming being calling a transgender person by the birth name instead of the name they have adopted. Gender inclusive needs no explanation.
Right,
and the one that particularly resonates with us, Black with a capital B. So here's what the dictionary.com says about it. It says the change confers the dignity, the due dignity to the shared identity, culture, and history of Black people, and aligns with the practice of using initial capital letters for many other ethnic groups and national identities.
Yeah, so they put some respect on the Blackness. Respect.
Yes.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan.
Yes, me too. So why are you a big fan?
It's about time. It's been too long, and language does matter. And although we were kind of joking just now when we said they put some respect on it, that is actually the initial cap is a visual marker of adding respect to Black people's identities, and we obviously we all know we as an ethnicity. We have, generally speaking, been disrespected, disenfranchised, and just generally dissed. And just generally dissed. So this is a linguistic move in the right direction in support of the general global movement that is and recalibration that's happening right now. So I am in full support.
Absolutely.
What about you? Why are you a fan?
I co-sign everything that you just said. I think that it is important for us as Black people to see that visible sign of a little additional respect, because, goodness knows there are many arenas in which we don't get it.
Yeah, because the lowercase b signifies minoritization, literally signifies that.
Yes.
So again,
exactly.
An uppercase B says no, sort of indicates. You're not a minority. It's an indicator.
Yes, because let us not forget that Black and brown people are people of the global majority. Okay,
we are indeed.
We are indeed. There may be fewer of us in some areas than others, but as a population, we are the majority population.
Yeah.
Now that's a slight segue, but I say that to say that it is important to have that recognition. It is important to signal that shared identity.
Yes.
With the capital B. That's how I feel about it.
I agree.
That's how I feel about it.
Yes.
Okay. But of course, that is not the only major change to have happened.
Oh, really? What other changes have there been, sis?
Believe it or not, Merriam-Webster has redefined the meaning of racism. Okay?
Ooh. Yeah. Okay, so how did this, that sounds like a bigger change than capitalizing the B in Black. So how did that come about?
Well, Kennedy Mitchum, age 22, wrote to the editors to say that the dictionary definition needed to be expanded to include systemic racism. And the editors agreed. So let me give you an example of what that change.
Yeah, because that was what I was about to ask. Like what was the definition that made her have that?
Okay, so the old definition was racism is a belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. Okay. But the new definition.
Well, sorry. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Speak.
So my reaction now, I can see now that I'm actually reading it, because I never actually, until very recently, went and looked up definitions of racism. It's so interesting because nobody has the same definition. So that's a whole other story, right? That's a whole nother story. But by phrasing this and couching it as, a belief, that one race is superior, it kind of sounds like if each individual people may or may not have this belief. So I can see where additional nuance was needed.
Definitely needed, because as we all know, it's not just like that.
No,
Right?
no,
It's not just like
it's not.
that.
I believe it's not a white person or non POC saying, well, I just believe that I'm better than you are. Because if that was all it was like, okay, fine, you believe what you want and you carry on with life. There is much more to it than that.
Much more to it. So the new definition has three parts.
Mm-hmm.
First, a belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race, very similar to before.
Mm-hmm.
Next, it's the systemic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another.
All right.
And then,
all right, Miss Kennedy Mitchum, you did your thing, yes?
a political or social system founded on racism and designed to execute its principles. Bam!
Oh, bam.
Right?
So actually the systemic portion is
Yes.
by level, yeah.
It is. It's very nuanced.
Very
right?
nuanced.
It actually it says more about what racism is and how it operates.
Yes.
So, as a Black woman, I'm very happy to see that additional definition being out there. If I were really picky, I would like to see the systemic bit at the top, but I'll take what I can get, right?
Yeah. It's going to get there.
It is going to get there, but it does better reflect the way in which systemic racism operates. It does better reflect the endemic nature of it.
Yes.
It does.
And the thing is that sorry, go ahead.
It does reflect the constant building blocks of racism that keep being dropped on Black people.
Oh, wow. Quote.
All right, sorry, you were going to say something.
You always drop any hot quotes, girl. I love it. Yeah, because I think with the former, let me see here, the former definition, I believe that race is the primary determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. Some, let's say a child, in middle school, high school, whatever, looking at that is going to think, okay, well, I don't believe that, and be done.
Yeah.
And be done, absolving themselves of any deeper inquiry, of any responsibility.
Exactly.
Because of course, nobody, I think why white people and some non-Black POC have such a strong reaction to being called racist.
Stronger than,
it sounds, I beg your pardon?
Stronger than actually calling out racism, but anyway.
Yeah. They have a strong reaction to being called racist because they feel like it is an attack on them.
Yes.
Not realizing that racism is systemic racism is an attack on us.
Exactly.
And so I could see where the old definition definitely needed to be updated and revised. And again, this is all part, the capitalization of the being Black, the redefinition of the word racism. All of this is coming out of George Floyd.
All of this is coming out of George Floyd. All of this is coming out of the new civil rights movement.
The new civil rights movement. That's what's happening.
That is what I believe is happening. I think when we look back on 2020, among many other things that we will look back on 2024, this, the murder of George Floyd and the movement that sparked.
Yes.
Or reignited, because
it's never really gone away. Stopped.
It's never really gone away. It's been sort of trundling along, but it definitely reignited a renewed interest in equity and justice for Black and brown people. Yeah. And for other disenfranchised groups as well.
Yes, because there oh my gosh,
there are many.
There
are many.
Too many to mention, but yes, it's not
Let's
that Black people are the only disenfranchised
Not
group.
at all.
Yeah.
Indigenous groups,
because let me tell you, the Aborigines in Australia.
They got a raw deal, boy.
They have it just as bad, if not in some cases worse.
Although I was very happy earlier this year to see that Australia's Supreme Court threw out a case which was trying to get an Aborigine deported for some crime or other.
Right.
And the judge basically ruled that, he was there first. You can't throw him out.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yes. Okay. So that is that on that for now. I'm sure we'll come back to it. And let us go to in our world, our main topic. And Lisa, will you kick this off, please?
I will indeed. So what we're going to talk about now is traveling while Black.
Yeah.
And okay. First of all, let's talk about traveling, period, because who is traveling right now anyway?
Nobody.
I certainly have zero intention of getting on a plane for a while, but I think you and I discussed maybe a couple episodes back that travel is something that we both love.
Yes.
And have been doing since we were children.
Mm-hmm.
And post pandemic, whenever that might be, we would definitely like to get back to traveling more frequently, traveling more regularly. So, and while Black is one of our favorite phrases. Like you have an entire series, for example, in your anti-racism writings, your While Black series. We've done on this show, we've done Introverting While Black, for example.
Absolutely.
So again, today we're doing Traveling While Black, and you actually wrote an article kind of about this topic a little while ago. I think you focused on, it was business travel, right?
It was business travel, that's correct.
Yes.
And the fact that, you, as a Black woman, as a Black traveler, you have to raise your game in terms of your appearance and attitude in order to make sure that, you don't get more than the minimum amount of stoppage, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's
basically, to put it in a nutshell.
To put it in a nutshell, I mean, it's like code switching, but specifically as relates to travel.
Absolutely.
So a lot of us, some people, don't make any adjustments, but a lot of Black people and people of color do.
Yes, they do.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said, yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yeah, yes, we do. And you change, maybe you could change your tone of voice. Some people go as far as to change their accent. Some of us change our mode of dress, etc., etc. All of which is to say, people out there are non BIPOC listeners, is that racism. This is tying it all together, because racism, again, it's systemic and it affects every part of life. And so what Black and Indigenous people of color experience is very different when traveling.
Absolutely.
As in when just going through life. It's very different from what white people experience, right?
Yeah.
And so, we definitely have to make adjustments. And dating back to the Jim Crow era.
Yes.
There was it was basically called a Green Book, right?
Yes.
And to put it very simply, it was identifying, one part of it was to say, hey, here are some Black-owned, some Black-owned locations, hotels, etc.,
restaurants, etc., where
that you can enjoy. But the deeper side of it was, here's where you won't get killed.
Yes. Yes.
Here's where you won't get killed. Yes. Here's where you won't get harassed. Here's where you won't get profiled. Here's where you won't get turned away.
It seems actually very, very pertinent as that new show now focuses on sundown towns. Right?
Yes.
So the fact is that there were places that you could go. If you made the mistake of going to certain places, you would not make it out alive the next day.
You might not make it out alive. It
was needed. It was needed.
Yeah. It was absolutely needed. And you know, like we said, as a Black traveler, it's hard to find. One part of it is just finding experiences that resonate with you, finding places where you feel safe. And so there's a brand new, like I said, there was a green book back in the Jim Crow era.
Yes.
There's a brand new ABC Travel Green Book. It's a guide by Martinique Lewis. And yeah, she of course, she was inspired by Victor Hugo Green, who was the original creator and author of the Green Book. And yeah, so it's meant to be a resource for Black tourists globally. So I'll just keep it simple. I'll just read a little blurb about the book. Okay, that'll be the easiest way. So the number one resource for Black tourists globally in a world where our history was purposefully left out and sometimes even erased. The ABC Travel Green Book helps travelers realize that people of the African diaspora are everywhere. This resource can tell you things search engines can't. Yes, there are Black people in Yemen. Yes, there are Black people in Turkey. Yes, the next time you take a trip to Quito, travel further up north and spend a day with the Afro-Ecuadorians, also known as the Esmeraldas. If you want your hair braided in South Korea, the ABC Travel Green Book can help you. Are you interested in the Black History Tour in Israel? The ABC Travel Green Book has you covered. So, the resource was created to celebrate Black culture, serve our communities, and it helps connect the African diaspora globally from A to Z. So I am a fan. Again, when I do start traveling again, I am going to be consulting this book.
Get a copy, yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, because, you know, you always go to places and you kind of look around and you know, sometimes you get a vibe and you say, don't know if I should be even walking down this street. You know, we've all been to those places, right?
Do you have any memories of sort of just sketchy things that happened, or were you ever actually turned away from anywhere, or you got a bad feeling?
One thing that I wrote about was going to a small town in France and sitting there yammering away to my white friend until, you know, we'd been there for 2.5, 3 hours before we realized we were never going to get served.
Oh, wow.
Right. And you and I
having a good conversation. That's a long time.
Yeah, we had a lot to talk about. Yeah. You and I have been to places where they stick us down in the back because, you know, so I think in terms of places to eat, those are probably the worst experiences. I don't recall ever being turned away from somewhere. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's just that, you know, after you've been traveling for decades, it gets hard to remember every single experience. Of course, as you've asked that question, there's something sort of niggling away in my brain, but I really can't bring it to the forefront. What about you?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember if that has ever actually happened. I don't want I guess my worst travel experience that I can recall is being on a train somewhere in the middle of Italy. Obviously I was the only Black person, right? Me and some friends of mine were doing an El Cheapo cross Europe train thing. And I don't even remember which town. I can't call it a city. It was a little town that we got to. And, you know, the train conductors or whoever they were and police basically wanted to hold me because, I thought I might not make it out of here because they let, you know, the Brits and Americans through fine. Looked at my passport. You know, the guy called over, you know, some others to come and look at this, you know, this bizarre document. I was traveling on a Barbados passport, as I still do. And with endless stamps. Like I said, I've been traveling. It's not, you know, not like I hadn't been places before. But they didn't quite understand what Barbados was. Didn't understand what it was. I guess they thought for some reason that this passport full of stamps was a fake, and tried to. They held me there for a minute. They held me there for a good minute.
just reminded me of an experience in Venezuela.
Oh, do tell, do tell.
A group of us were heading off on an overnight bus trip to another town out of Caracas. And so somewhere in the middle of the night, in the middle of the hills, the bus got stopped for them to check passports.
Mm.
Now, back in those days, I traveled then as I do now on a British passport. But I had two passports with me because my old passport was the one that had the stamp that would let me back into Barbados. I used to keep them strapped together. You probably recall this.
I do.
Right?
I had the same thing. I remember that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so these 16-year-olds with guns, and that's what they look like. They might have been 18, but let me tell you, those soldiers were not old enough to shave. Okay? Right? Stopped and had me come out. They didn't speak English. So it kept being passed up the chain.
Yeah. Right.
And so eventually they realized that, okay, it was fine. And I got back onto the bus, had to walk down to my seat in the back while all the other passengers stared because, of course, we had held up the bus. So, yes, it can be scary.
It is terrifying. Like, I remember, like, mine happened. It was like, I still remember, like it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I can remember it.
Yes.
Clear.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
It's almost like some bizarre movie, when these things happen, Only thing that was missing was it wasn't raining outside. That was the only thing that was missing.
But
there needed to be danger music and some rain, and it would have been a movie.
Absolutely. So I think it's not that you're not going to go other places. It's not that you're not going to go to a variety of places. I think it's useful to have a resource that says, okay, here is where you can find people who look like you. And B, here are the places you're going to be safe. Yeah. And 3,
especially
here are the
women,
places to avoid at all costs if you're a Black woman traveling alone.
That's where I was getting to. Black women traveling alone, especially. There's somebody that I used to follow on IG who went, where the heck did she go to? It wasn't that far. It might have been Tulum, right? Yeah. If that's how you pronounce it. Is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know.
Whatever. Anyway, that place.
Yes.
And, she's traveling alone. A guy, she's an influencer. She had her camera and equipment with her, and a guy, kind of like made small talk. And long story short, ended up stalking her. And attempting to rob her. So these are things that happen. And I think that the ABC Travel Green book is going to help out.
Absolutely.
Help, like you said, help women traveling alone, Black women and women of color traveling alone to avoid those kinds of situations. And you can never really safeguard everything.
No.
But if you start off a bit further ahead by consulting something like this, I think it makes a huge difference.
I think it's always wise to travel armed with information.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. So, maybe what you and I should do is, plan a trip. We should plan a trip based on this green book.
And then,
like 2 years from now.
A couple of years from now, when people can travel again.
Yeah.
And then, you'll hear about it on this podcast.
You will indeed. It will be, the traveling while Black update. Traveling while Black and introverting while Black.
Yes. Right. And I think on that note, that is where we're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for listening. This has been a fun episode. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you have too.
Yes, and remember, Black with a capital B.
Black with a capital B.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Introvert Sisters. Loved what you heard? You can catch all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major platforms. Subscribe, rate, and write a review. Find us online at theintrovertsisters.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Introvert Sisters. See you next time. Peace.